Okay, welcome to part 8. On part 8, we're gonna discuss the fake object that we created in the last part here. If you missed that part on part 7 when we were implementing a fake object that implemented our interface, please go check that out. Part 7. Never miss that one. At least you'll be able to follow on what we're doing right now. Okay. So, let's get back to it. So now I've introduced fakes, or rather an idea of implementing a fake, just so at least it can just be one of the dummy objects really that simulate what's supposed to be happening, but obviously always return a positive result so that our test doesn't fail, right? So now the one problem that you might say here is this. We created a fake here. Imagine having to do this all the time, right? For all the dependencies that you have. What will happen? I mean, it just means that you have a bunch of code that you're writing that really shouldn't be there in the first place, right? Or at least what it should be there, but it's not necessary to have it, so to say, right? And you would be right by saying that it's not necessary to have such code. Is there a better way of doing this without us having to write fakes all the time and doing all of that? Because that might just deter you from writing your unit test and saying, my class is calling that class, and then now I have to write all of these fakes. I mean, I've gotten you past the first excuse that you might be having because you might have the new keyword inside your class like we had in bank account and your class is being tightly coupled. We fixed that problem where our code was tightly coupled, and then we kind of fixed that, coding against an interface. So you don't have an excuse. We did that. Now, the second excuse you're going to have, because obviously you are programmed to have excuses, myself included, okay? The first excuse, or rather the second one you're going to have is saying, but I have to then write all these other fakes. It's a problem. Then I'm like, no, it's not. That was meant to solve your problem. But is there a better way? Of course there is a better way, okay? And one of those ways is actually using mocks. So we've seen how to use fakes. Now we're going to use mocks. M-O-C-K, mock. Mocking something or mocking somebody. What do we mean by that? That's actually cloning or kind of simulating, basically, if you think about it, right? Or pretending to be something. So let's rather say pretending. So because our fake is actually just a fake, it's pretending, but we want mocks in order to do more of the same thing that our fakes were doing. But the difference between your fakes and mocks is that, on our fakes here, we had to do them manually. That's the first thing. Secondly, we don't have any kind of behavior, so to say, right? So we just have those methods that we created, the empty ones. They will return all those values that we want to return. But with mocks have behavior. So you can tell a mock object. So you start by creating a mock object from your interface. That's why we were creating interfaces in the first place. Then you tell that mock object to say, you know what? Fake this functionality here. Or rather, you set it up to say, act like this. You can tell it to act in a specific way. We'll see that later on if need be. But for now, I'm going to do the exact same thing that we created here. Instead of using fakes, we're going to use a mock. How about that? And the first thing you're going to need is let's go to our edit here again, our project here. We're going to need mock MOQ now. MOQ is actually a package by another team here. It's supposed to give you those functionalities and everything like that. And I'm not gonna go through the entire thing on what mock is and all of that, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just show you guys the site that you need to go to, right? In order to get started. You can literally go onto the GitHub page. It's actually open on my other screen here. Let me drag it over here. You can just go Google mock. This should come up. This should be part of the other stuff that's coming up here. Go in and say mock, and then you'll be brought here. You will see basically what mock does and how they use it and stuff like that. You can see it has a setup method, and you can simulate if there's a method inside there, do this, so you can tell it what to do as opposed to you On the fakes, you have to actually write the method to return that value. But here you can tell it when this method is called, for example, ping, then return true and all of that. It's more you can do there. So I'd advise you guys to go here and read up about mocks. But in our scenario, we're just going to do the exact, a similar thing, but more limited, okay? So in this case, we have this part here where we are creating this fake service here. So what are we going to do now? What we're going to do is we're going to try and use mocks, okay? So using mocks is as easy as saying, let me write a comment this out here. Right, and then instead of this here, I'm going to say var, right, equal to new mock. So there we go, it's a mock. So you need to give it a type, basically, that it needs to mock. And the reason we created interfaces was for the same reason that we now doing this here. So I'm gonna now say, actually mock my iNotification service. Mock it, man. Pretend to be it. Basically, that's what we're saying. So then it pretends to be the mocking service. But this is not yet our interface. This is basically our, it's a mock object. So now, in order for us to get the interface, because you can see this is actually throwing an error, say you pass in the mock and we want the notification service. All you need to do is, from here, you'll say notification service dot, and then you say object. You want the actual object now. You're extracting the object. And the object there is actually our notification service. And you can see our error is gone. We didn't have to do anything else. We didn't have to write all those other fakes and create a new object of it and do all of that. That's all that we did here. So let's see if our test passes, basically. Run, and then I'm crossing my fingers. My fingers are still crossed. It's taking longer, and then our test is passing. And that's basically that. We created a mock, which is, if you think about it, just about one line here, and then we actually telling it to mock our service there and our interface, and then we just say dot object here, and that's about it. Okay, and actually there's something that's bothering me here as well, okay? And that is how we are calling our class here. So now we literally have to now pass this here together with our interface here. And this is based on the legacy code that we had in here. So we're gonna go about refactoring this as well. The good thing, again, I'm cementing this into your head, okay? Writing unit tests kind of helps you as well with refactoring your code without having any doubts. So you're refactoring with confidence. So I'm gonna go there, and then we're gonna say double, no, I don't want that anymore. Actually, we've seen the problem with our code and say, why are we actually even doing that? So I'm then gonna remove this here, right? And then we're gonna look into our, let me actually do this here as well. We're gonna say, that's that. And we're gonna do something of this nature here. Okay, get, and then set. So and then remove this guy over here. So that's basically now gonna be our public property here of our balance. So this allows us to get the balance here and also set the balance here. So because we've done this, the get and set, we no longer also need this getter here, which is our getter method here. We don't need it anymore. So we'll be able to use this property here to be able to do all of that. So what does this do for us, basically? Okay, so let's see what's happening here. I'm gonna then, just to keep this clean as well, I'm gonna remove this guy here, okay? Remove him, he's gone. And we're then gonna say, remove this, we're just gonna say balance here. Well, so reference the balance there, and then also reference the balance there. I could have done this better, by the way, but hey, pardon me, okay? So I'm gonna do that there as well. And here as well. I think this should be the last one. Let's see. Okay, so we refactored our code here, right? We didn't change the functionality, but we changed how we're doing some of the things. Like, for example, now we simplified our API there, so we don't have to pass the what do you call this? The actual account balance when we create the bank account. So we will, instead of doing that, I'll come under this here and say, now it's complaining about that, and then we're just gonna do this here. I'm gonna remove this, right? So let's go to bank program.cs, because that's where we're gonna experience another one of our issues, and I'm gonna just do this here. Right, there's a problem that I've introduced here that I hope we pick it up with a test here as well. So remember, our test is still the exact same way. All I did was remove the amount there, and then we're gonna run this, and I hope that problem is introduced, and then we can see what the issue is. Okay, so it's built successfully. Now we're having a problem here. So what is the problem? So we're saying we expect 1,000 and the actual is 500. So what happened here? It's one of those oversight that you might have had, okay? So we changed how we set their account balance, okay? So because of that, we now need a different way to set the account balance. And that way is basically part of our setup here. So that's SUT dot balance equal to then 500 now. And then we're now gonna try and run that. So basically we changed how we're doing it here. So therefore we no longer have to pass it on the constructor. We're passing it via the property here and our setter, okay? So then this should work here. But you could easily see that having that being an oversight, our test failed and we picked that up. That's one of the most important things about the unit test as well. And we can also do this here, take the advice here and then initialize this object in this way. It's still fine, you can do that. Or you can leave it like that, whichever way you prefer. But our setup now has, remember our setup was just one line before, now it's about 3 lines now. Okay, so 3 lines to just set this up, and our test only starts here, and this is where we actually testing if it's working as it's supposed to, as intended, so to say. So I'm going to run this here and hope everything goes well, and everything did go well and everything passed. And that's basically that. I've walked you through every possible scenario here. I mean, it's not everything that you guys needed to know, but it's basically enough to get your head around unit testing and why we need unit testing, how to go about doing it, what are fakes, what are mocks, what is a mock object, okay? And also interfaces, how to refactor your code. I've walked you through all of that, and I appreciate everything. Thank you very much for lending me your ear. Have a wonderful day. Botsa tlhogi.